Good afternoon, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Midday Prime. In the next 1 hour, we bring you all the stories and updates from India and across the world. Government continues to appeal to farmers to engage in talks to resolve the logjam over the new farm laws. Prime Minister Modi's virtual conference with Japan and Vietnam, update on COVID and the vaccine management efforts in the country, and also how people are coping with cold wave conditions, particularly across northern India. All that and more. First, the big news at this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses India-Japan Samvad Conference, says this forum has done great work to promote ideas and ideals of Lord Buddha, especially among the youth, proposes creation of a library of traditional Buddhist literature and scriptures. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vietnam's PM Nguyen Xuan Phuc to hold a virtual summit later today. Two leaders expected to exchange views on wide-ranging bilateral, regional and global issues. Government urges farm unions to come forward for talks, assures to resolve their issues with full sensitivity. INB Minister Prakash Javadekar says Modi government has worked tirelessly towards welfare of country's farmers since 2014. Says these measures by the government are for prosperity of farmers and for agriculture sector to flourish. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan says the government is alert and there is no need to panic from the new strain of coronavirus in United Kingdom. Cautions citizens to strictly follow COVID-19 appropriate behavior. Says safety and effectiveness of vaccines is first priority. Expects that the vaccine shot in India can be given in January 2021. Ministry of Power promulgates rules laying down the rights of consumers. Power Minister R.K. Singh says these rules shall empower electricity consumers, and these rules emanate from the conviction that power systems exist to serve the consumers, and consumers have rights to get services and reliable quality electricity. In another big surrender of rebels, 63 cadre of 4 banned outfits to lay down arms in Guwahati today. This is the second biggest surrender of rebel cadres after 644 rebel laid down arms in January this year. And sky gazers in for end of the year treat for eyes as great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn to happen tonight. Let's now begin with the big news. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the India-Japan Samvad Conference this morning. The focus of Samvad Conference was on enhancing the positive influence of traditions of non-violence, tolerance and democracy in Asia. Prime Minister Modi proposed the creation of a special library of traditional Buddhist literature and scriptures. He said the library will not only be a depository of literature, but also a platform for research and dialogue and a true samvad interaction between human beings, societies and people with nature.
I would like to propose the creation of a library of all such traditional Buddhist literature and scriptures. We will be happy to create such a facility in India and will provide appropriate resources for it. The library will collect digital copies of all such Buddhist literature from different countries. It will aim to translate them and make them freely available to all monks and scholars of Buddhism. The library will not only be a depository of literature, it will also be a platform for research and dialogue, a true samvad between human beings, between societies, and between man and nature.
And Prime Minister Modi also said our actions today will shape the discourse in the coming times, and this decade will belong to those societies that place a premium on learning and innovating together. Prime Minister said that it will be about nurturing bright young minds who will add value to the humanity in the times to come.
This is the first samvad of a new decade. It is happening at a critical moment of human history. Our actions today will shape the discourse in the coming times. This decade and beyond will belong to these societies that place a premium on learning and innovating together. It will be about nurturing bright young minds who will add value to the humanity in the times to come.
And Prime Minister Modi said Lord Buddha's teachings command the strength to turn the discourse from enmity to empowerment. Prime Minister said Lord Buddha's teaching make us large-hearted.
It is rightly mentioned in the Yamak Bhaggo Dhammapada. Nahi beren berani sammantit kudachan averena cha sammanti esha dhammo sannantano. Hostility will never achieve peace. In the past, humanity took the path of confrontation instead of collaboration. From imperialism to the world wars, from the arms race to the space race, we had a dialogues, but they were aimed at pulling others down. Now, let us rise together.
Let us now go across to our correspondent Arun Sharma to understand more about the India-Japan Samvad Conference. Arun, help us understand the larger context, significance of this Samvad Conference while it seeks to take forward the shared Buddhist heritage of the two nations.
Good afternoon, Shubhendu. We know this fact that this was the Samvad of this new decade that starts from 2021 till 2030. So the idea of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is that how can we create a new future that will be, innovative in nature, and of course, youngsters will contribute in that new decade. So yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had made a new announcement primarily and has proposed a digital library primarily that focuses upon the Buddhism, the literature that is related to Buddhism. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has proposed this idea as to how can the contemporary challenges, the current challenges primarily can be dealt with the preachings and the teachings of Lord Buddha that we have seen very often. So that was the prime focus of Prime Minister Narendra Modi as to how can the teachings and preachings of Lord Buddha can help us solve the problems that we are facing as of now. Second important aspect, the focus was on youngsters and innovation part.
Right.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly focused this point that only the democratic, the open-minded societies will be in a position to innovate and will be in a position to give a proper ecosystem to the youngsters of the country or the society primarily, which can innovate for the future. And in that context, the collaboration, the shared vision that both India and Japan are having as of now plays a critical and significant role as far as providing a bigger platform to the youngsters so that they
Right.
can innovate and of course learn new things. Last but not the least, it's about confrontation versus collaborations. In the past, we have seen that a lot of confrontation has happened. So now the world needs to understand this fact that no matter what, it is the collaboration that will help us, build a bright future and not the confrontation that we have seen in past. So yes, a bigger messaging on the platform of Buddhism primarily as to how can Buddhism help us primarily. The teachings and preachings of Buddhism can help us, in shaping the bright and the new future.
Right, and taking a cue from there, in tangible terms, Arun, if we talk about the close development partnership that exists between India and Japan, how significant are the tangible outcomes that we can expect in the times to come, whether we talk about youth engagement, innovation, or peaceful collaboration? All right, we'll connect with Arun in just a bit. That is Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was participating in India-Japan Samvad. We'll connect with Arun in just a bit. Another important update concerning Prime Minister Modi will be holding a virtual summit with Vietnam Prime Minister Nguyen Tran Phuc today. Now, during India-Vietnam Virtual Summit, the two leaders are expected to exchange views on wide-ranging bilateral, regional and global issues. The two leaders are expected to discuss measures to foster Vietnam-India comprehensive strategic partnership, as well as regional and international issues of shared concern. India and Vietnam enjoy comprehensive strategic partnership announced during Prime Minister Modi's visit to Vietnam in 2016. Meanwhile, in 2020, both countries continued to maintain high-level exchanges. Vice President of Vietnam, Dang Ngoc Thinh, came to India in February 2020 on an official visit. Both Prime Ministers had a telephone conversation on 13th April 2020 to discuss the situation arising out of COVID-19 pandemic. The 17th edition of the Joint Commission meeting, it was held virtually, co-chaired by the two foreign ministers, was held on 25th August 2020. Raksha Mantri held an online meeting with his counterpart on 27 November 2020. Once again, let's connect to my colleague Arun Sharma to understand the larger context of the India-Vietnam virtual summit. Arun, again, it's interesting that the second important meeting virtually that Prime Minister will have after Japan today is with Vietnam. The larger context, again, the significance of it, engaging in dialogue, conversation and development partnership with our neighbors in Asia, in East Asia in particular.
Absolutely, Shubhendu. Now, this will primarily be the 9th virtual summit that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to hold today with Vietnam. Earlier, we have seen that Prime Minister Narendra Modi held virtual summits with various European countries, the Central Asian countries, and of course, we have seen virtual summits with Sri Lanka, Australia, and other countries as well. So this will be 9th in that series of virtual interaction. When talking about the focus, well, this is the first ASEAN countries with which Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be engaging in as far as the virtual summit is concerned. And I mean, close to 2 dozen or more than 2 dozen agreements MOUs are likely to be signed as far as this virtual summit is concerned. Well, talking about the virtual summit, it is very much expected and likely that the focus will be on defense, energy, healthcare sector, and of course the development cooperation part as far as this virtual summit is concerned. We know this fact that as far as India and Vietnam are concerned, both India and Vietnam concurrently will be holding that position or at the UNSC of the non-permanent member from 2021. So this is also an important part as far as the reforms and the multilateral institutions are concerned. As far as multilateral institutions are concerned, this position for both India and Vietnam is very much important, and world is primarily looking at India as to what India has to offer when it joins from 2021, or primarily when it holds the position of that non-permanent membership seat at the UNSC. Second important aspect is that when we talk about India and Vietnam, talking about the defense sector primarily, it is very much expected that a defense line of credit is also likely to be extended as far as the boats or the guard boats is concerned to Vietnam, because earlier also India has extended a line of credit of $600 million to Vietnam to enhance the defense manufacturing in Vietnam as well earlier. So now the focus is very much likely on the defense sector as well. Last but not the least, the focus will be on the Indo-Pacific region as well, as far as enhancing the Indo-Pacific region. What are the common challenges as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned, and what more can be done so that prosperity can be brought in as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned? That will be a likely topic of discussion as far as the India-Vietnam virtual summit is concerned. And last but not the least, let me also bring this point to notice that the Mekong-Ganga cooperation primarily, and of course, we know this fact that the water management projects is also very much high on the agenda when this virtual summit happens. Right. So Mekong-Ganga project, and how more can be done in order to boost this Mekong-Ganga project as far as the water projects and water management project are concerned. That is also likely to dominate as far as this virtual summit between India and Vietnam is concerned. Shubhendu?
Right. So there are diverse aspects to look forward to in the India-Vietnam virtual summit that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to represent and talk about. Security of the Indo-Pacific, lots of many issues. Thanks very much, Arun, for joining us with those inputs. Let's now move to our developing story. Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar has said that the government is doing its best to bring about emerging technologies in agriculture by upgrading the National E-Governance project focused on agriculture. In a tweet message, Union Minister said, and I quote, Modi government is doing its best to bring about emerging technologies in agriculture by upgrading the National E-Governance project for agriculture. The welfare of farmers, agriculture sector is at the core of all these initiatives by the government. And the minister also tweeted and said that Modi government has worked tirelessly towards the welfare of our farmers since 2014 when it came to power. These measures by the government are for prosperity of our farmers and for the agriculture sector to flourish. Here's how the recent reforms will also help in doubling farmers' income. He shared a video showing how the recent reforms will help in doubling farmers' incomes. It's a special video that INB minister shared.
सरकार ने किसानों के हित में लिए गए फैसलों पर अन्नदाता के हितों को समर्पित मोदी सरकार नामक एक लघु पुस्तिका जारी की है। इस लघु पुस्तिका को अभी हिंदी, अंग्रेजी और पंजाबी में प्रकाशित किया गया है। देश के सभी हिस्सों में इस पुस्तिका का वितरण किसानों के बीच किया जाएगा। सूचना एवं प्रसारण मंत्री प्रकाश जावड़ेकर ने कहा कि किसान के प्रश्नों पर सरकार ने अपने नजरिए को रखा है। साथ ही उन्होंने कहा कि इस बुकलेट को लेकर लोगों में अच्छा उत्साह है।
अन्नदाता नाम से जो बुकलेट सरकार की तरफ से हुई है, उसमें गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री रहते प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किसान की दृष्टि कैसे रखी किसान के प्रश्नों पर, और पानी, बीमा और सब में जिस तरह से काम किया, और अभी प्रधानमंत्री बनने के बाद सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड से लेकर नीम कोटिंग यूरिया से लेकर फसल बीमा योजना से लेकर किसान सम्मान निधि से लेकर एमएसपी में जो कॉस्ट प्लस 50% का ऐतिहासिक फैसला किया, ये सब निर्णय उसमें है। और मुझे विश्वास है ये अभी लोग बहुत मांग रहे हैं और हम भी सब ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोगों तक पहुंचेंगे।
Now, the government has asked the protesting farmer unions to specify their concerns over its earlier proposal of amendments in the new farm laws and choose a convenient date for next round of talks. In a letter to Krantikari Kisan Union Punjab State President Darshan Pal, Agriculture Ministry's Joint Secretary Vivek Agarwal has said in a letter that the centre is making all efforts with an open heart to find an appropriate solution to resolve all their concerns. Meanwhile, farmers are holding a meeting amongst themselves to decide the further course of action. A decision regarding the meeting of delegation with Agriculture Minister is expected to be taken. Let's now look at the letter that the Joint Secretary of Agriculture Ministry has written to the farmers. What has been said in that? Primarily, the letter talks about the efforts to talks, efforts to engage that the government has taken so far. Let's begin with the beginning of the letter, what it talks about. It says government's letter to the farmer leaders email rejecting government's earlier proposal on 9th of December does not specify the reason. Now, this is the same proposal in which MSP and APMC related provisions were talked about by the government that they will stay. Again, the letter says it's not clear if the views expressed while the farmers rejected the government's proposal, the views represent the leader's personal view, Darshan Pal's personal view, or the view of the entire farmers' organizations. It's a very brief message that the farmers' organization, the Darshan Pal, sent in an email, so it's not clear what do the organizations as a whole want. Let's now look at the sequence in which government has tried to engage in talks with farmers. When farmer unions started protest in Punjab, Agriculture Secretary sent invitation for talks on 8th of October. So way back, couple of months back, when the initial signs of protest had come up, the government did make an effort to initiate talks right then. But the invitation was turned down. Another polite invitation was sent by the government for talks. Then on 14th of October 2020, and then on the 14th of October 2020, talks take place between the farmer unions and Agriculture Secretary. Now, Agriculture Secretary tried to discuss all aspects of the new farm laws when the talks take place. But the farmers' leaders refused to engage. They just said that they want the laws to be repealed. They don't want to discuss further on the farms. Now, amidst the public inconvenience caused by the train stopping instances in Punjab, a ministerial committee was formed for talks to take the talks further. We know that ministerial committee was headed by Agriculture Minister. Then on 13th of November 2020, ministerial committee invited farmers for talks to come to the national capital in Delhi and come for the talks. Government proposed certain important provisions. It said there can be a high-level panel with adequate representation from the government and the farmers. Also, that call for protest should be called off, at least for now, and the train services should be resumed. These were some important provisions. But that proposal was again turned down by the Farmers Union, and the protest was announced to begin from 26th of November this year. Now, this is how the letter updates and talks about the steps taken by the government to engage in talks with the farmers. Now, for welfare of all farmers, another invitation for talks was sent for 3rd of December now. But Farmers Union proceeded for Delhi for a protest nonetheless. Government had said that let's talk, you don't have to proceed for protest, maybe talks can find a way, but that didn't happen. Then permission was given. Once they did proceed for the protest, permission was given for protests at designated sites in the national capital. Also, government made provisions for basic facilities like drinking water that was made available to protesters. So government supporting also the rights of the farmers to protest. Now, in order to bring an end to the protest, the date for talks was preponed from 3rd December to 1st of December, but the farmers rejected it. All of this is sequentially mentioned in the letter that the Joint Secretary has written to the farm leader. Now, on 3rd December, finally the talks takes place. Government agrees to also include newer concerns of farmers, the bills related to electricity use and stubble burning in the negotiations in view of bringing more welfare initiatives for the farmers. Now, after those talks, the date for the next talks were decided to be 5th of December, but Farmers Union announced Bharat Bandh even while the talks were announced for 5th of December. 5th of December, farmers' leaders refused to engage in specific conversation about the different provisions of law. They just hold placards and say yes or no about repealing of farm laws. So it was a deadlock sort of a situation. Talks could not go further. Now, amidst the call for talks, the government appealed for the welfare of farmers again, that the senior citizens, women, children, especially in this cold and COVID situation, who are participating in these protests, they should return from the protest. They should not be made to be a part of protests for their own safety. Meanwhile, on 9th of December, government shares a detailed proposal to address all concerns of the farmers. That proposal we've talked about in detail earlier, proposal in which they've said that MSP will stay, APMC will stay. Also, different amendments have been talked about vis-a-vis electricity and stubble burning bills as well. But that proposal finally was also rejected by the farmers, but government continues to keep the doors open for talks, and this is the context. We come back to the first point of the letter again, where the government has said that the farmers have not in very great clarity said why did they reject the proposal, because it in great detail talked about each of the concerns related to the new farm laws, and it tried to bring about amendments as well, but no breakthrough has been made so far. Meanwhile, as we mentioned earlier, that talk is taking place amongst the farmers for the next round of talks with the government. Our correspondent Vishal Beristo is now joining us from Singhu border for the latest. Vishal, just take us through what is happening at the moment. All eyes are on the next round of talks. When and in what form will they take place? Vishal.
Eyes on the talks. Very good afternoon to you, Shubhendu. Right now, I'm here at the Sindhu border, and as you can see, there is a barricading behind me, and 100 meters from this barricading, the agitating farmers have blocked the highway. A lot of problems that the common man are facing, but we are all optimistic because the talks are on. The farmers are holding a meeting amongst themselves, and by 4 o'clock we would get to know as what is the final outcome of the meeting, because the government, as you mentioned, has kept the doors open all the time, and given the situation of COVID and coal, we are all expecting that something would come out, some sun would come out of the clouds, and this is all we are hoping, because the letter issued by the Joint Secretary Agriculture late last night has clearly said that the government is ready to give them in writing that the MSP will stay forever, and all other apprehensions of the farmers the government is ready to talk about with an open heart and open mind. So let's hope that the outcome of the meeting of the farmers come out positively. not only for them, but for all the people of the country, because remember, we are all facing this problem. And I've been here watching people, how they have been facing problem, because this area is totally barricaded. I would ask my cameraman to show you how the common man is facing. They are not allowed to go because the farmers are sitting there. Not even the farmers, but also the common man, they are facing the heat of the situation. So we all expect that the meeting would come out with a positive attitude, and by evening we would get to know as what they have decided. And what we are expecting that the meeting is, because we have been informed that the meeting is being held on the whether to on when to go for the final round of talk with the agriculture minister, or the next round of talk. But we hope that this is going to be the final round of talk. Shubhendu?
Right, Vishal, an important aspect of the talks and negotiations that stood out in the letter that the Joint Secretary has written to the farmer leader, right in the beginning, he talks about when the farmers supposedly rejected the detailed proposal by the government, they've rejected it in a very brief message. There is no clarity as to what are the concerns that were not met, and it is also not clear if the rejection represents the farmer leaders' views or the views of all the organization. Now, my question is this: is there a great clarity on the manner in which thousands of farmers who are protesting, are their concerns represented in the correct manner? What is the leadership that is really bringing together all the concerns and engaging with the government? Is there clarity on the top of the leadership among the farmers?
Well, Shubhendu, if I speak as of now, while the meeting is being held, it is very difficult to analyze as to whether there's a clarity, because obviously there are different voices coming out from different factions. There are factions who have supported this new farm law, and they're saying that it is the small and marginal farmers who are going to be benefited to a great extent. But there is a faction who believes that the MSP would go away, or the APMCs, which have been here since the British Raj. Remember, it was made by the Britishers so that the mills of Manchester get cheap cotton from India. Now, all those things, they have to be discussed, but a one-liner email does not clarify anything. But this is for sure that it's a divided house as far as the farmer unions are concerned, because they are not speaking in one voice. And that is why it would be also taken into account that the government is ready to talk to them again and again. The Prime Minister yesterday also told them that he is ready with an open mind and open heart.
Right.
So let's think, let's hope, or rather not think, that the final outcome of the meeting would be positive, because after all, we should not forget that this is a situation where you have both cold and COVID.
Right, we'll have to wait and watch when and how that next round of talks takes place between the government and the farmers. Vishal, thanks very much for joining us with those updates from Singhu border. Moving on now to our National Prime segment. And Union Minister Dr. Harshvardhan today briefed media about the 6th India International Science Festival, which is scheduled to be held between December 22nd and 25th. The minister informed that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be inaugurating this festival tomorrow, while Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu will be delivering the keynote address on the last day of the festival. The theme of the festival is Science for Self-Reliant India and Global Welfare. This year's IISF will be the biggest science festival to have been organized virtually.
की और संतोष की बात है कि हमारे इस इंडिया इंटरनेशनल साइंस फेस्टिवल 2020 का उद्घाटन स्वयं हमारे प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी कल शाम को 4:30 बजे करने वाले हैं, और इसका जो समापन कार्यक्रम है वो भी जब 25 तारीख को होगा, उस कार्यक्रम में भी हमारे भारत के उपराष्ट्रपति श्री वेंकैया नायडू जी उसमें शिरकत करेंगे। इसके बीच में बहुत सारे अलग अलग प्रकार की एक्टिविटीज़ में हमारे बहुत सारे वरिष्ठ नेतागण, बहुत सारे मंत्री लोग, वो सब उसमें शामिल होंगे।
And talking about the mutated variant of COVID-19 cases rising in the United Kingdom, Union Minister Dr. Harshvardhan assured people that the government is alert and overlooking all developments in this regard. He added there is no need to panic as of now.
ये सब इमेजिनरी सिचुएशंस, इमेजिनरी बातें, इमेजिनरी पैनिक, इन सब के अंदर आप अपने आप को मत उलझाइए। सरकार हर बात के लिए पूरी तरह से सजग है और जैसे पिछले एक साल में आपने देखा कि सरकार ने आवश्यकता के अनुरूप जनता के हितों की रक्षा करने के लिए जो जिस समय पर आवश्यकता किया, वो सारी चीज़ें सरकार देख रही है।
And Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan, in a major announcement, has said that government's priority has been safety and effectiveness of corona vaccines. He said the government does not want to compromise on the safety aspect of the vaccine. He said maybe in the month of January, the centre can be in a position to give the first COVID-19 vaccine shot to people in the country.
जनवरी के महीने में भी कभी किसी भी स्टेज पे, किसी भी सप्ताह में ऐसा समय आ सकता है जब हम भारत के लोगों को पहला जो वैक्सीन का शॉट है वो देने की स्थिति में आ जाए।
And the Health Ministry also cautioned people to strictly observe COVID-appropriate protocol like wearing mask, hand sanitization and social distancing.
I feel that the worst may probably be over, but with a strong, you see, a note around caution that we need to be very, very strictly following the COVID appropriate behavior. We cannot afford to relax on that front. So the major tool against COVID for achieving success in this fight will ultimately be this mask and of course hand hygiene and physical distance that we are all supposed to follow.
And the minister said that the centre, along with the state governments, has been making preparations at state, district and block levels for the past 4 months for appropriate storage of vaccines.
तो हमारी योग्यता और क्षमता में किसी प्रकार की कमी नहीं है और हमने पूरी तैयारी की है। नीचे लेवल तक पूरे स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स को इन्वॉल्व करके स्टेट के लेवल पर टास्क फोर्स बनाकर, डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पर, ब्लॉक लेवल पर देश में यानी कई हज़ार मास्टर ट्रेनर्स को पहले ट्रेन किया है। उसके बाद हम देश की 33 स्टेट्स में स्टेट लेवल पर ट्रेनिंग कर चुके हैं। करीब 260 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स के लेवल पर हम ट्रेनिंग कर चुके हैं 20,000 से ज़्यादा लोगों की। और जो हमारा जो कोविन प्लेटफॉर्म है, एक ऐप है, और जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्लेटफॉर्म है, ये जो वैक्सीन के लिए इलेक्ट्रॉनिक जो सारी टेक्निक को यूज़ करके हमने जो हमारा नॉर्मली भी वैक्सीनेशन के कैंपेन में यूज़ होता था वो प्लेटफॉर्म अब हमने उसको कोविन प्लेटफॉर्म के रूप में विकसित कर दिया।
And the health minister also highlighted India's recovery rate as the highest in the world for COVID, and he said that COVID-19 situation is in its declining phase in India.
I think things are significantly in a declining phase. I say that because right now you have just about 3 lakh active cases in the country. A few months back you had almost 10 lakh cases. Out of over 1 crore cases that have happened, 95 lakh 50,000, more than that, have already recovered, gone back home. We are having the highest recovery rate in the whole world, between 95 and 96.
Let's now take a look at the update on the COVID-19 front from across the country. India continues to achieve significant success in its fight against COVID-19 pandemic. As per Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, a total of 25,709 people recovered in India from COVID-19, adding to the cumulative total of 96,06,111. With this, India's recovery rate from COVID has reached over 95%, as 95.53%. Number of COVID-19 cases registered in the last 24 hours have also seen a declining trend, with percentage of active cases quoted at just above 3%. India's tally of active cases is around 3,03,600, while mortality rate remains less than 1.50%. The Meteorological Department has predicted that the cold wave conditions in northern India may dissipate in the coming days. The freezing temperatures in the mountainous regions and their effect on the plains caused the cold weather to rise. No cold day conditions is likely to prevail over northwest and adjoining central India during the next 3 days, except for over eastern parts of Uttar Pradesh. The current spell of cold day to severe cold day conditions over eastern Uttar Pradesh likely to continue till tomorrow. Today, cold wave conditions were observed at isolated places over eastern Rajasthan, eastern Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Odisha. As per IMD forecast, minimum temperatures have increased by 1 or 2 degrees Celsius over most parts of Punjab, Haryana, West Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. Mount Abu in Rajasthan being the coldest, with the minimum temperatures being -1 degree Celsius. And our colleague Murari Gupta is joining us from Jaipur with more update on the cold conditions prevailing in the region in Rajasthan. Murari, what is the weather like today? And in view of the Met Department prediction, what do the days ahead look like?
शुभेंदु, अगर बात करें संडे के आज के कल के बाद, तो यहाँ टेम्परेचर पिछले एक हफ्ते के मुकाबले थोड़ा सा इंक्रीज वाइज से लोगों को राहत मिली है। अगर बात करें पिछले सप्ताह की, तो पिछले सप्ताह से जो रात का टेम्परेचर है 18 शहरों में, राजस्थान के लगभग 18 शहरों में 10 डिग्री से नीचे बना हुआ है। और ऐसे 3-5 शहर ऐसे हैं जहाँ 5 डिग्री से भी नीचे टेम्परेचर गया हुआ है। माउंट आबू की जहाँ तक अब बात आपने बताई थी, वहाँ लगातार टेम्परेचर माइनस में बना हुआ है। आज भी -1 से नीचे टेम्परेचर बना हुआ है। इसके बावजूद भी लोग वहाँ लगातार घूमने के लिए आ रहे हैं। जयपुर की भी बात करें तो जयपुर में लोग गुनगुनी धूप का आनंद लेने के लिए आ रहे हैं। हमारे मौसम विभाग से बातचीत हुई तो उनका कहना था कि ये जो कंडीशन अभी बनी हुई है, अगले 3 से 4 दिन तक जो टेम्परेचर है इसमें कोई उतार चढ़ाव होने की संभावना नहीं है। और जो शेखावाटी का एरिया है राजस्थान में, जिसमें सीकर, झुंझुनू, चूरू आते हैं, वहाँ जो शीतलहर अभी बनी है वो उन तीनों एरिया में सिमटने वाली है, सिर्फ वहीं रहने वाली है। बाकी जगह से जो शीतलहर का पिछले एक सप्ताह से लगातार चल रहा था, वो कहीं ना कहीं अभी रुका हुआ है। लोगों को राहत मिली है टेम्परेचर बढ़ने से।
मुरारी, धन्यवाद आपके इन सभी अपडेट्स के साथ हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। माय कॉलीग Murari Gupta giving us update on the weather conditions prevailing in Rajasthan. In particular, temperatures have dropped, and in Mount Abu it's -1. Moving on, big news that has come in. 63 cadre belonging to 4 rebel outfits will lay down the arms in a ceremony today in Guwahati, in Srimanta Sankaradev Kalakshetra. The cadre belong to the 4 rebel outfits: United Liberation Front of Ahom Independent, that's Ulfa 1, People's Democratic Council of Karbi Longri, and Dimasa National Liberation Army, and the United People's Liberation Front, UPLF. The arms laying ceremony will be presided over by Assam Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal. Earlier in January this year, a total of 644 cadre belonging to different insurgent outfits laid down their arms in a ceremony at the Guwahati Medical College and Hospital auditorium. And Mridhu Smita is joining us with more updates on the story. Mridhu Smita, help us understand how big an achievement for the administration and the way forward for the individuals who will lay down their arms.
Yes, definitely, Shubhendu. It's a very positive move, and it is a very good for the progressive Assam and the Northeast along with the nation, because it's a great development as the extremist groups, the four groups and the cadres that have laid down their arms in the past few months. And today is the formal ceremony that is happening here in Assam, in Guwahati, where Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal is also presiding over. And it's a very positive move and a great step for them as well, because even after laying down their arms, they will be having a proper life of their own and joining the mainstream. And through the schemes like Swabhalamban scheme, they can be self-sufficient and they can have their own business, and they can become entrepreneur, and they can live quite a good living through such schemes. And as you know, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also quite positive about such schemes where the extremist groups come to the mainstream, and they join the mainstream group, and they can also live a life as an India being a youth country. These youth can have a good life ahead, and that also will help in the progress of the nation. Shubhendru.
Right, Mr. Smita, also in brief, what do we know about the motivations of people from these extremist groups who are laying down their arms? What motivated them to come be part of the mainstream and make use of opportunities like any one of us, just to understand the manner in which the administration has engaged with them?
Yes, basically the Assam government here in Assam is giving various opportunities for the youth basically to start up new, there is also a scheme that Startup India, through which even Assam government is also giving quite a lot of stress upon, so that youth can come towards and they can have a talk with the government, and also they can have their own business and they can start up their own, and in fact they are given different kinds of training to start a pig farm or even a poultry farm or anything of that sort. They can have their own life and ahead in a positive manner, and they can live a good life ahead.
A progressive and positive moment ahead in the day when the rebels lay down their arms. Smita, thanks very much for joining us with those updates. And time now in Midday Prime for all the news and updates from the world of business and finance. And my colleague Ajay Mishra gets us all the details.
Thank you, Shubhendu. It's a very big day for the over 30 crore consumers of power sector in the country. The Union Power Ministry has promulgated the rules laying down the rights of consumers. While issuing these rules in New Delhi today, Minister of State for Power R.K. Singh has said that these rules shall empower the consumers of electricity in the country.
First time ever, we have come out with rules stating explicitly that the consumers have rights, that the power system exists for serving the consumer. And if those rights are violated, there will be penalties. The consumer has a right to get connection, and he has a right to certain standard of supply. He has a right to certain standard of service. We have provided timelines for different services. Wherever there is a consumer interface, we have provided for timelines. Even for standards of service, we have laid down that those standards of service are violated. For example, if there are numerous interruptions, if there is load shedding beyond a certain number of hours, laid down, there will be penalties. So we are saying that the consumer has rights, and those rights have to be followed, otherwise we have to pay a penalty.
And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today held pre-budget consultations with leading experts in infrastructure, energy and climate change in New Delhi. The meeting held in connection with the forthcoming Union Budget 2021-22 were attended by MOS Finance Anurag Singh Thakur, Finance Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs and Chief Economic Advisor KV Subramanian, besides other senior officials. This is 11th pre-budget consultation meeting in a row. The domestic benchmark indices opened in the red on Monday morning following negative global cues. S&P BSE Sensex was down over 150 points on opening and was seen adding to the losses minutes after the bell. The Nifty 50 was below 13,700 level. Only 5 Sensex constituents were trending with the gains, while all other were in red. The gainers include L&T, RIL, HDFC Bank, among others. The Axis Bank and ICICI Bank was down 2% each. Broader markets were also mirroring the fall. The Asian pairs were trading with the losses on Monday morning, with the Shanghai Composite down 0.26%, while Hang Seng fell 0.67%. And Delhi High Court on Monday declined to grant Kishore Biyani's led Future Retail Limited, that is FRL, plea for an interim injunction restraining the Amazon from writing to SEBI, CCI and other authorities about the arbitral order against its asset sale. Justice Mukta Gupta passed an order on FRL's plea, claiming that the Amazon's writing to the authorities about the emergency arbitrators award amounting to interfering with the 24,713 crore Reliance Future deal. FRL ran into a severe cash crunch soon after the nationwide lockdown imposed to curb the coronavirus outbreak. It cut a deal with Reliance Industries Limited to sell assets for 24,713 crores. So that's all in the Business Prime. For more news and updates, let's go back to Shubhendu.
Thank you, Ajay, for joining us with those inputs. And let's now find out what's making news across the globe. Now, sky watchers are in for an end-of-the-year treat tonight, as the darkness of the night will be punctuated by a rare planetary conjunction. Jupiter and Saturn will rendezvous in the night sky tonight and may appear joined as one double planet. It's been nearly 8 centuries, 800 years, since the pair of planets appeared this close together in the night sky. In 1623, a similar conjunction of the planets occurred, but on the same side of the sky as the Sun. That meant the conjunction wasn't visible from Earth. NASA says the conjunction would be bright enough to be easily seen from large cities towards the southwest sky. Saturn will appear just to the right of Jupiter. The two planets have been inching closer to each other since September. Despite their proximity in the night sky, Jupiter and Saturn will be hundreds of millions of miles away from one another. Yet with one virtually in front of the other, they will appear only a tenth of the degree apart. Meanwhile, today also marks the winter solstice, or the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. That's when the sun's most direct rays shine far south of the equator. Into the springtime, Earth's orbit will begin to tilt the northern hemisphere back towards the light. Massive crowds jammed the roads and train stations on their way leaving London on Saturday evening, hours before a new COVID-19 lockdown went into effect to the emergence of a newly discovered, highly contagious coronavirus strain. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Saturday had announced a new Tier 4 of coronavirus restrictions for London and other parts of England to combat an alarming surge in infections linked to the new variant strain. From Sunday morning, London, the southeast and east of England moved into Tier 4 restrictions. Hours before the restrictions went into effect, train stations and roads were packed with people eager to escape the capital. Some people described the scene as a battlefield on social media, as many struggled for ticket vacancies. And time now for all the action from the world of sports. My colleague Suchitra brings us all the updates.
Thank you so much, Shubhendu. And Sports Ministry has approved the inclusion of 4 indigenous games to be a part of Khelo India Youth Games 2021, scheduled to take place in Haryana. The games include Gatka, Kalaripayattu, Thangta and Mallakhambh. The 4 selected games represent different parts of the country. Kalaripayattu has its origin from Kerala and has practitioners all over the world. Mallakhambh, meanwhile, has been well known across India. Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra have been the hotspots of Mallakhambh. Gatka originates from the state of Punjab, and this traditional fighting style of the Nihang Sikh warriors is used both as self-defense as well as a sport. Thangta is a Manipur martial art. The sport will get national recognition again with the help of the Khelo India Youth Games 2021. And let's go live across where Narendra Singh Tomar is addressing the meeting.
खेती के लिए जरूरी है, लेकिन अगर पानी कम भी हो और हमारे पास किसानी करने वाला व्यक्ति ज्ञानी है, तो भी बहुत अच्छी खेती में वो योगदान कर सकता है। और जब ज्ञान की बात आती है, तकनीक की बात आती है, मानकों की बात आती है, गुणवत्ता की बात आती है, तो ऐसे समय में निश्चित रूप से यह ध्यान में आता है कि खेती के क्षेत्र को आज सबसे अधिक आवश्यकता है। तो तमाम सारे ऐसे हमारे विद्यार्थी जो हमारे 74 कृषि विश्वविद्यालयों में से प्रतिवर्ष 20,000 से अधिक बच्चे ग्रेजुएट होकर निकलते हैं। अगर उनका ज्ञान, उनकी जानकारी, उनकी ऊर्जा खेती के क्षेत्र को मिले तो मैं समझता हूं कि देश का एक बड़ा काम हो सकता है, जिसकी अपेक्षा देश को एक लंबे कालखंड से है। नए बच्चे खेती की ओर आकर्षित हों, इस दृष्टि से प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने अनेक योजनाओं का सृजन किया है, अनेक नए कानून बनाने का काम किया है। ये योजनाओं के पीछे लाखों करोड़ की फंडिंग और नए जो कानून हैं, ये एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है कि इस प्लेटफॉर्म पर एग्रीकल्चर ग्रेजुएट खड़ा होकर आने वाले कल में हिंदुस्तान की तस्वीर को भी बदल सकता है और हिंदुस्तान की तकदीर बदलने में भी अपना एक महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे सकता है। मुझे ध्यान में आता है कि हमारे यहाँ एक संस्कृति विकसित हो गई है, पढ़ना जरूर, इसलिए
So Agriculture Minister interacted with some students, and those were some of the visuals of the interaction. Moving on to football, Scott McTominay became the first player to score twice inside the first 3 minutes of a Premier League game as Manchester United climbed to third in the table with a remarkable 6-2 victory over old rivals Leeds at Old Trafford. McTominay scored in second and third minute of the game for Man U. The victory lifts Man U above fourth placed Everton on goal difference, while Leeds remain 7 points above the relegation zone on 14th. Leicester put a major dent in Tottenham's Premier League title challenge on Sunday, climbing to second in the table. Spurs were top of the table before their midweek clash with Liverpool, but now find themselves 6 points adrift of the champions after a damaging 2-0 defeat at home. The win, Leicester's 6th in 7 away games, lifts them to within 4 points of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool after 14 matches and will have Fox's fans dreaming again. On to Spanish League, Real Madrid beat Eibar to record a 4th straight La Liga win and keep pace with leaders Atletico Madrid. Karim Benzema opened the scoring with his 7th league goal of the season and then set up Luka Modric as Real scored twice in the opening 13 minutes. Both sides had chances in a hard-fought second half, but Lucas Vázquez sealed the points for Real in injury time. Zinedine Zidane's side moved above second-placed Real Sociedad, but have played 2 games more than leaders Atletico, with the city rivals level on points. Scottish champions Celtic beat Hearts 4-3 on penalties in the Scottish Cup final to clinch an unprecedented domestic quadruple treble in Glasgow on Sunday. Celtic have now won all 3 domestic trophies, the Scottish Premiership, Scottish Cup and Scottish League Cup, for the 4th successive year. So those were some top sports stories. Back to you, Shubhendu.
Thank you, Suchitra, for getting us that sports roundup. And let's now find out what's in store in Live Prime today. Now, inspiration for high fashion can come from strange places. For one Taiwanese designer, it's upcycling old wires and bolts from the power industry. Designer Wang Liling skirts dumps, picking up old bits of metal and wires from Taiwan's main electricity supplier to add extra flair to her clothes. The wires and other materials are stitched onto dresses and other items of clothing, giving them a rather futuristic feeling, drawing a warm reception at the fashion show in Taipei. A popular destination for trendy tourists in pre-coronavirus times, Taiwan has an up-and-coming fashion scene whose designers are starting to make an impact on the world stage. And with that, we conclude this edition of Midday Prime. News and updates continue after a short break. Namaskar.